guest today is one of the great spiritual masters of our time. Applauded, celebrated, awarded the Nobel Prize. One of India's great national inspiration. I'm delighted to welcome. Hello and welcome to my series of conversations with men and women whose ideas, vision and philosophy help define our contemporary world. My guest today is one of India's most distinguished bureaucrats, a member of the Indian Administrative Service. He's the Chief Information Commissioner who has sort of spearheaded and steered the Right to Information Act and its implementation about 3 years ago. But he's here today really wearing another hat that derives from his long, distinguished, passionate involvement with issues in Jammu and Kashmir. As a member of the IAS, he has served in various capacities in the state for more than 2-3 decades. He's recently published a remarkable, incisive personal narrative that enlarges on his own experiences to looking at issues, predicaments and possible solutions to the problems in Jammu and Kashmir. I'm delighted to welcome Wajahat Habibullah.
Thank you.
You have just returned from Kashmir after what had seemed to be a relatively peaceful summer. Things have begun to stir up again due to the transfer of land and the issues related to the Amarnath Yatra body. What at this time seem the portents and for the future in the next, say, 3 months, 6 months?
Well, I hope that what you say is not correct and that it's been stirred up again. I hope that this is just a passing phase. It is correct that it has been a very tranquil and a very peaceful summer, and there has been a request looking out for ways and means of trying to resolve the various issues which jeopardized that state and brought so much misery in those last decades. But don't ask me to predict on the future. I'm really not a person who can talk about it. I can only join you and every other Indian, I'm sure, in hoping that the future will be much brighter than has been the past 20 years. But in my book, in fact, that is what I wanted to really address. I felt that my experience of working there, which was in very good times, but then in also very, very sad times, it was better that I put it down, because perhaps it may carry lessons for the future. It was my personal experience. I was a member of the government, in fact leading the government in the time when the entire administration had virtually broken down in the state.
You were also a very significant interlocutor for the government. You were sort of seriously, you had a near fatal accident, or you were wounded at about the time the Hazratbal, the siege, and so you've had a very intense involvement, a great deal of passion, a great deal of energy, intellectual, emotional, invested in what was happening in Kashmir. The picture that your book paints is essentially an extremely distressing one, and while much of the focus in discourse about Kashmir tends to be in everyday newspaper reporting, is on the specifics of what you can do and who you can negotiate with and what Pakistan might do and whether trains should go more frequently, but I think that the central element that emerges from your book is the issue of the dignity of the people of Kashmir and their self-respect, their feelings of alienation from India, and until those fundamental issues are resolved, the rest in a sense seems tinkering.
Well, I would agree with you. The case I've tried to make out is that the people of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, that includes all regions of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, deserve nothing less than what the rest of the countrymen, rest of the people of India enjoy, and that is complete freedom to live the lives that they choose. And democracy is, of course, an evolving process. It will never remain static. It can't, because it will keep having inputs from different generations, different streams of thought, which will influence and mold the way in which democracy moves. But what is essential to democracy is that the people should have a sense of participation. It's a sense. It's a psychology. You must feel that you're in charge of your own life. You will bring up your children in the way that you want them brought up. You will live your life in the way that you want to live. This is the right of every Indian citizen. And we have now over the years developed laws to match that. We've had the 73rd and 74th Amendments bringing self-government right down to the village level, in which each citizen, each villager becomes a member of the Gram Sabha and therefore equivalent to an MP. You have the Right to Information Act, which I'm seeking to try and administer. You have a number of such laws and things which bring this about. We often complain that there's too much freedom in India, but I think you can never have too much of it. But that is all I'm really arguing for the people of that state.
In fact, you've argued that looking at the democracy and even in sort of in elections that you were in a sense mandated perhaps to sort of facilitate or allow the rigging of, but you worked toward ensuring that it wasn't entirely. But the fact that we really haven't had real democracy hasn't provided the sort of the escape valves for frustration and anger that other states and other regions of India have enjoyed. And you have also argued that much of this has to do with the precedence that the government of India has given to national politics as opposed to the interests of the state. Much of this has to do with, apart from political expediency at the center, it has to do with mindsets in the rest of the country in terms of attitudes to Kashmir. There are sections of opinion that argue and say, well, maybe if we had encouraged, population transfers into Kashmir, as the Chinese are doing into Tibet, for example, we really wouldn't have had a problem. So we're not just looking at what you do in Kashmir per se, and of course we are, but also how the rest of India views Kashmir and the problems there.
Well, naturally, because in any case you can't do that kind of thing in a democracy, things like population transfers. A very good example of that, of course, is what happened in Chechnya. That population, as you know, was entirely deported, and look at the situation there now. But the idea is, and that is the idea of India, that every citizen of India must feel himself or herself to be an Indian. And how does he feel that? He feels that simply. There are, of course, a whole framework of nation building and so on, but simply by believing that this country belongs to me, this government is mine, and I am of this country. Now, once that feeling comes, and it has come in most parts of the country, there are still some frayed edges where it needs to come. So I don't know, you say you found my book depressing. Many of those who have read it say the same. But I feel that I'm trying to say that if you let the people proceed in the way that they would want, then in that case it will not be depressing. It will be a source of joy. There will be the babbling brooks, the laughter, which is the Kashmir that I remember. It was that way, and it had almost been resolved by the 70s. I think I've tried to bring that out in the book, but things went wrong. Why did they go wrong? Let us see that they'd never go wrong again.
I think that you've talked about this issue of Indianness. You said within sort of the ambit of India, just as a Tamilian feels passionately about Tamil Nadu or Keralite about Kerala, similarly the Kashmiris are entitled to feel their Kashmiri identity as the rest of India does. But the question inevitably is that what are the kinds of things that government, civil society can do to address this feeling of alienation, which and make the kind of difference that we're all hoping will happen.
Quite simple. Build trust. Trust is broken there. Once that trust is built, you will find that these things will disappear. And the reason is that you talk about Tamil being proud of Tamil, being Tamil, Malayalis being proud of being Malayalis and from Kerala, Andhra Vadus being proud of being so similarly Kannadigas, Bengalis, so on. And you're entirely right. But the point which also is true in Kashmir, and then I've tried to make that point, it was the only state in India which actually became part of India because the people wished it to be so. It's of its own volition. And why did it become that? I've tried to analyze that in the thinking of Sheikh Abdullah and his Atishat Chinar. He had felt that in India their identity would be protected, their dignity as a people would be protected, while they would be part of the larger whole. But that is India. That is India. Every part of India is proud of being that part, but it's also proud of being part of the larger whole. I don't see what the difficulty is about the Kashmiris being allowed to feel that, but there has been mistrust. Mistrust between the government and the people and their state government, the state government and the government of India. Now mistrust must go. You cannot build a democracy, you cannot build freedom on the basis of mistrust.
The question really is looking to go beyond that in some ways, that the question of trust is sort of evoked or betrayed by the actions of the government, the central government of India, in the manner that it has manipulated and managed elections. The dismissal of the way Sheikh Abdullah, Farooq Abdullah, the different times. Of the way the rules under the Defence Services Act are implemented in lieu of in everyday law and other procedures. But it also has to do with the way that the rest of the people of India react to and engage with the people of Kashmir. There's a great deal of work going on, people-to-people contact, just as it is across the border. It also is within the people of the rest of India and Kashmir. So beyond the expediencies of the central government, what are the kind of initiatives that civil society, that you and I, well, not exactly you and I, because you've had a hands-on engaging with it, but the larger community, what are the kind of things that we should be looking at and thinking about?
Well, certainly, this point is very well taken. The fact is that they remained a somewhat isolated community, and their impression of what the rest of India was only from their interaction with maybe the representatives of the central government, IAS officers like myself, or military personnel. And for years, the military personnel also remained very aloof from the local population. That has changed now. The military personnel have certainly realized that they have a duty to try and win over the trust of the people. But, and this is also now happening, there are a number of NGOs from the rest of the country now working towards learning, studying and working with the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And a fallout of this period of turmoil has been that there are a lot of Kashmiris now outside India and living in different cities in India and earning. And of course they always come back and are there. So these are positive trends. They can be built upon. But how do you build upon them? You just build upon them by encouraging them. When people from that state go and live in Bangalore, Hyderabad, Kolkata, Mumbai, and then go back now and then, now they're marrying outside also. Earlier you would never find Kashmiris marrying non-Kashmiris at all. That would be true both of the Kashmiri Muslims and the Kashmiri Pandits. They are, in fact, these two communities have always, in my view, been one people. But with that being the case, now that what the rest of India, I don't see that now we should all marry our boys to their girls and their girls to our boys. No, but let them be free to feel what they feel like. Let them come and settle here if they wish, or go and settle back in Jammu and Kashmir if they wish. The point is that you said that the government of India has brought about this. I don't see that this is really a time to start assigning blame. There have been people from within Jammu and Kashmir who have been equally responsible. There have been people from Delhi who have been responsible. There has been a very difficult role that Pakistan has played over the whole thing by going on trying to stir up difficulties there whenever there were difficult periods. But these are things that now we should recognize and try and put in the past. The Kashmiri people are ready to move forward. Let us give them that chance. Let us work with them to make them feel that they are part of us and that they can move forward. India is now on the verge of a great leap forward, to use the words of Mao. And that is not because anybody is imposing a great leap, but because the country and its people are ready for it. Let sections of our people not get left behind. Let them be participants in that great leap.
Mm-hmm. You've been watching a conversation with Wajahat Habibullah, who's the Commissioner of looking after, managing, steering the Right to Information Act. We'll be right back after a short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to a continuing conversation with Wajahat Habibullah. We've been really talking to him about his book, My Kashmir. He's written extensively, numerous books, essays, and articles on Kashmir with great passion and with great conviction. You know, you mentioned that there was another player here, and that was Pakistan. And when we talk about Kashmir, we just sort of, it isn't just a question of India engaging with another part of its own territory or its own people, but another party that has that is an occupation of a part of the rest of the Kashmiri geographical area, and hence the people of Kashmir there. So what, I mean, apart from the engaging that we keep talking about, what Pakistan can do or can in a more emphatic way not do, and that is stir up trouble and just leave it alone perhaps. But even that isn't enough, because there are actions and initiatives that are needed and expected of Pakistan that are much more proactive than the passive ones of not stirring things up. And that is really what happens to POK and what are their initiatives and policies in that region. In what ways do you think that India can concretely, tangibly begin to influence that process?
Well, so far as India is concerned, I have believed for a long time that our greatest strength is our democracy. Pakistan is an emergent democracy. Certainly, that makes clear what the roadmap can be. We can certainly work together. I would plead that the Pakistanis also give their people the part of Jammu and Kashmir, which is now, I think, for purposes of diplomatic nicety, called the Pakistan-administered Kashmir. Give them that same feeling. I do know, and I have met a lot of these people now that you have these meetings of people from both sides of the line of control. A lot of people from the northern areas, what is called the northern areas. It has now been divested, in fact, from Kashmir. It's called the northern areas, and the rest is called Azad Kashmir. The people of the northern areas feel that they need to have a position of their own, that they have joined the state of Jammu and Kashmir only about 150 years ago. They're not traditionally a part of that state, and they have their own dignity. They have their own self-respect, and they want that to be respected. They'd like to be treated as separate. So the point is, whether you want to be treated as separate, how you want to be, it doesn't really pose a danger to us, particularly in this world of globalization, when trade, commerce, and so on is being encouraged between countries, between regions. And this is a portion of the Indian subcontinent which abuts into Central Asia. In fact, traditionally, before the time of the Mughals, it was really very much a part of Central Asia. And here it became part of the Mughal Empire, because Akbar was interested in establishing himself there because he saw a threat from his relatives in Central Asia. But all that said, now it is part of the subcontinent, part of us, and I would suggest to Pakistan that instead of trying to stir up difficulty here, as they have done in the past, and hopefully they will now not do in the future, they may try and build their part of the state of Jammu and Kashmir in the manner that I am suggesting for ours. That means allow their people to grow, allow people from the whole of Jammu and Kashmir to meet up with each other, talk to each other, enjoy each other's company. And for that reason, there's already been progress in regard to that. Roads and so on are opening up. Trade is to open up shortly. With all that said, the point is that even if you continue to have a border between the two parts of Jammu and Kashmir, the point is that the relationship has to mend between India and Pakistan. And on that, I must admit that there has been considerable progress. The mending of relations within India and within Pakistan, of those areas which are with us and those areas with Pakistan, has not been quite as satisfactory.
Mm-hmm. You know, your role and your style of functioning when you were an IAS, when you were serving in Kashmir, were legion. At the time of of great threat and terrorism. You went around without personal security. You have demonstrated a commitment to Kashmir and to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, far beyond what would be traditionally seen as the call of duty. You have been you're deeply interested in Sufism. You have mourned the way that many of the essential ideas and philosophies of Sufism have been perhaps diluted. What is the source of your passion?
I think that you, of course, repeatedly use the word passion. I don't know if I'm a particularly passionate person, but certainly it has been love. I've always loved the Kashmiris, and that love grew in the 90s when I saw so much suffering around me. That love stems from, I think, what is the basis of all faiths, and this I've learned from no other than His Holiness the Dalai Lama. The basis of all faiths is compassion. I think that is what has guided me, and hopefully will continue to guide me. It also guides me in my administering the Right to Information Act, even though I impose so many penalties.
Well, we'll come to the Right to Information Act in a moment. You've been watching a conversation with Wajahat Habibullah. We'll be right back after a short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to a continuing conversation with Wajahat Habibullah, the Commissioner managing the Right to Information Act. That's approaching sort of 3 years now, in a few months. What are your sort of feelings and thoughts at this time? At many levels, it seems to have been extremely powerful, a very important weapon for civil society, for the Aam Aadmi, but there are still many challenges and many, how do I put it, obstacles to be overcome.
You are right, there are achievements, there are difficulties, and there are challenges. But first of all, let me object to the use of the word weapon. This is a word. No, this is a word that is often used. I don't see it as a weapon. I see it as a tool. Why? Because the Constitution of India guarantees us a right to information, and this has been held, it's not being asserted by me. The Supreme Court has held this frequently, and a recent judgment of Justice Ravindra Bhatt of the Delhi High Court very comprehensively deals with this subject, and I think that's a definitive definition of the Right to Information Act, which he has propounded in a case which was in fact against the Central Information Commission. But that being the case, the achievement is that it is becoming part of the system. People are beginning to recognize, and this is a very major shift, people are beginning to recognize that information is not ours to keep in government. When we joined the service, we were told that information is only for us to enjoy. Please don't share it with anybody, not even your colleagues, unless you're compelled to. Then of course if the Parliament says something or if the court says something, you have to do it, but even then give as little as possible out. Don't give out the whole thing. And so we were trained in how you draft answers to questions in Parliament and things, so that you say a great deal but don't give out anything. So this is the kind of culture which we were brought up in. That is changing. People are beginning to realize that information is for the public to ask for, unless we are compelled not to give it. Now there are people who try to evade that, try to work their way around it, whatever. But that change in the mindset is coming. It's not come altogether. It's coming gradually, but it's coming. What is happening as a result is the obstacles are that as a result of that, and as a result of this newfound freedom the people have begun to enjoy, more and more people want to take advantage of it. They see that this will be a way of grievance redress also. They see that this will be a way of removing corruption also. Well, it's none of that. Yes, the information you get can help in grievance redress. The information you get can help combat corruption. But in itself, the Right to Information Act will not be doing that. And I get a lot of applications and appeals and complaints trying to ask me to pass orders suspending somebody and to start some work and things like that, which obviously I can't do. So all those are obstacles. This is a part of the learning process. This is happening already already, when the scope of the knowledge, the knowledge about this act is still very, very limited. I think not more than, if 10% of the population of India even knows about it, I'll be very flattered. But what happens when the rest of the 90% come to know about it and they start making use of it? The system will not be able to cope. Already it's showing signs of strain. So that is the challenge, how to design the system so that it will work. And the Act itself bears the answers. I can't start lecturing on that, but the Act itself does bear the answers. And the Act itself is a very cohesive law which can deliver, provided it is implemented in all its aspects and all its ramifications.
I think that one of the reasons why the weapon is an oft-used description is precisely as you said, that it isn't seen always as a source of information, but as an instrument to fix the system or to fix somebody, and very often that is a legitimate process or a legitimate use of the instrument. But I think equally the challenge is to devise mechanisms so that it is not abused, in the sense that there are stories of somebody accessing lists or information that they can then use for commercial or other purposes. It can be to intimidate a system with limited resources to provide the information and to overwhelm them and say, look, I'll fix you just by asking a lot of questions, even if there is there is justification and validity for the actions you have taken, but just the volume of it can be intimidating. In what ways are you being able to respond to the issues and the difficulties for the sort of the honest above board?
Commercial information does not have to be shared. There is also a provision that if the information asked for is going to divert your resources in providing it, you don't have to provide it in that form. You could give it in another form. These are, of course, delicate questions. I think that we have been largely successful in dealing with this, because the kinds of cases which used to come to us earlier no longer come. It's kinds of applications, 500 questions. Now then, and the appeal coming that why would my question not answered, and the chap says they don't really refer to me, then why was it not transferred to the concerned person for? And the Ministry, the Department of Personnel has also come out with now comprehensive instructions as to how such cases are to be dealt with. And you can ask a reasonable number of questions, and they must pertain to the particular department. I can't ask one department questions about the Prime Minister's office, Cabinet Secretariat, Home Ministry, MCD in Delhi, DD, all put into one, and I pay my 10 rupees, and I say, well, under the law you have to transfer to the PPIO who is supposed to supply me this information, so you go ahead and do it. Since you've not done it, I'm going to the Information Commission. So that kind of thing has been remedied. It's largely now petering out. As it is, also this devolves a certain responsibility on the citizenry. Now, a number of NGOs are very quick to agitate about what the Commission has not done or the government has not done. I have been suggesting to them, and they're also working on this, on putting pressure on the public, on individuals, not to try and break down the system. And that is what I mean by a weapon. With a weapon you try to break. Don't try and break the system. Try and make the system a little stronger so that it can be more. It can provide greater and closer and more effective access to all the information that it holds. A large number of the information we find which is held by government is possibly not accessible even to its own officials who don't know quite where it is, because you've got this thousands of years old government with records which go back hundreds of years, which people are not able to find where they are. And anything more than 20 years has to be given. It doesn't even qualify to be exempted. So with all that, the system has begun to find root, and as I said, the answers lie inside the Act itself, which I will not expand upon, but the computerization. It is the only law, as far as I know, which is actually cashed in on what has become one of India's greatest strengths, and that is in the software revolution.
You have distinguished yourself in so many portfolios. Your work in Kashmir, Secretary, Panchayati Raj, Consumer Affairs, Textiles, Rajiv Gandhi Foundation when it was set up, your interest in Sufism. May you never retire and continue to serve India and its people. And you have mentioned sort of, the articulation, the expression of, and the manifesting of passion. Is there something that you desperately want to do and haven't done?
I can't think of anything except that I don't think that I've done anything so great that there's nothing left for me to do. I will still continue to work. There's still mountains to climb, and I will still continue to work for my countrymen, for my people, all over India. And as I said, the theme of my entire existence is compassion. I believe that one is brought into this world in order to serve humanity, and I shall continue to do so to the best of my skills and the best of my beliefs.
Well, thank you very much, and here's celebrating that. It's been a great privilege. Thank you very much.
Thank you.